Hi everyone. Today Luisa and I are diving into some significant historical conflicts, such as the Gaza conflict and the Reformation and Counter-Reformation. We also be discussing events like the Inquisition, the Saint Bartholomew Day Massacre, the 30 Years' War, and the English Civil War, all from political, social, economic, and cultural perspectives. Let's start with the Gaza conflict. Luisa, what do you think is the most important aspect of its context?
Thanks, Juliana. I think one of the crucial aspects of the Gaza conflict is its deep-rooted political and territorial disputes, especially over Gaza, the West Bank, and the East Jerusalem. Politically, both sides claim the right to their land. Socially, Gaza faces extreme poverty, high unemployment, and restricted access to resources because of the blockade. Economically, it's stuck in a cycle of poverty. Culturally, both Israelis and Palestinians have strong identities tied to their land, religion, and history. It's more than a territorial dispute. It's a battle over narratives. What about you, Juliana? What do you think?
I completely agree. The emotional and cultural layers of the Gaza conflict make it more harder to resolve. It's not just about land, it's about identity, survival, and the future. Moving on, the historical conflicts, the Reformation, comes to mind. Luisa, could you explain how it influenced Europe social and politically?
Absolutely. The Reformation, which began with Martin Luther in the early 15th, challenged the authority of the Catholic Church. This division wasn't just religious, but also political. Many rulers saw the Reformation as the chance to assert their point over the Church. This shift in power to lead religious wars, including the 30 Years' War. Socially, it also changed people's views on religion and governance. Fostering individualism, the Reformation showed how religion and politics are interviewed, even leading to wars. Which is your perspective, Juliana?
That's a great point. The Reformation caused a huge shift, much like the Gaza conflict, which affects not only Israelis and Palestinians, but also the broader international community. It's also interesting to think about the Saint Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572. It was a terrible example of religious violence. How do you think it connects to the struggles in Gaza?
The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre was a tragic example of religious intolerance, where thousands of Protestants were killed by Catholics in France. It shows how deeply religious divide can lead to horrifying violence. In Gaza, we see similar dynamics. Religious and cultural difference influencing violence. It's not just about political control, it's just about survival and identity. How do you see it, Juliana?
I agree. The massacre highlights how deep divisions can lead to brutal violence, much like the Gaza conflict, where people are fighting over their very identity. Now, let's talk about the English Civil War. How do you think that fits into the broader historical context?
The English Civil War in 1642 to 1651 was mainly a political struggle between the monarchy and Parliament. But religious divisions also played a major role. The Puritans, for instance, clashed with the more traditional Anglican Church. This war represents a fight between authority and resistance, much like the Gaza conflict today, where more feel oppressed and fight for their own self-determination. What are your thoughts, Juliana?
Exactly. The English Civil War shows how political struggles are often tied to religious and ideological differences. It reshaped England, much like how the Gaza conflict is reshaping the Middle East. Now let's talk about the philosophical shift of the 15th to the 17th centuries. How did the rise of reason and the individualism influence historical conflicts?
The 17th to 17th centuries were full of intellectual transformation. The Renaissance and Enlightenment promotes the idea of human reason, individual rights, and scientific inquiry. Thinkers like Descartes questioned religion's teachings and emphasized the use of reason. These shifts were revolutionary because they encouraged people to challenge religious and political authority. This laid the groundwork for modern diplomacy, but also led to tensions like Inquisition, where church suppressed new ideas. How do you think this relates to the Gaza conflict?
I see a connection. Just like during the Reformation, where people began rejecting the authority of the Catholic Church, the philosophical shift toward reason and individualism in the 16th and 17th centuries mirrors the fight for autonomy and identity in Gaza. People on both sides cling to deeply rooted beliefs, much like the ideological conflict we saw in earlier periods. What are your thoughts on how these philosophical shifts shaped the modern world?
Modernity, which emerged from enlightenment, emphasized reason, individual rights, and the scientific process. These ideas lay the foundation for diplomacy and human rights. However, modernity hasn't fully resolved deep-rooted conflicts like those in Gaza, where identity and territorial disputes persist. The lesson from historical church and the Reformation and the English Civil War remind us that while we may process some issues remain unsolved. How do you think these philosophical shifts have shaped the world, Juliana?
I think the shift toward reason and individualism has given people the tools to challenge oppressive systems, but it also led to greater polarization as seen in Gaza, where both sides have strong narratives. Modernity has brought progress, but it also has exposed how history tends to repeat itself in the form of ideological and territorial conflicts. It's fascinating how historical events and philosophical shifts are interconnected, shaping the way we think and act today.
Exactly. By studying history and philosophy, we can better understand the pattern behind human behavior and conflict. This insight helps us make sense of current struggles like the Gaza conflict and guide us toward position solutions. So, by connecting past events, present conflicts, we can better understand their driving forces and hopefully find ways to resolve them. Thank you for this insightful discussion, Juliana.
Thank you, Luisa. It was a pleasure to explore these topics with you.